Sam Brownback. This is, or Brownback. It's fascinating watching this. You know, Ronald Reagan bought this thing, hook, line, and sinker. George Herbert Walker Bush, not so much. George H.W. Bush in 1980, during the primary against Reagan, they were both running for president, and Bush lost, and so he ended up being the vice president, or, you know, the Republicans nominated him for, and he became the vice president. George Herbert Walker Bush referred to Reaganomics as voodoo economics. Supply-side economics, this brand new radical idea that was put forward in the 1980s and late 1970s by, basically a bunch of right-wing crackpots. It was a justification for massive tax cuts on rich people. So, you know, if you're the shill for rich people, or if you are the rich people, and you want to have a giant tax cut, because at that point in time, the top tax rate was 74%. Now, only, less than 1% of Americans paid 74%. But that was the top tax rate. So if you want to get that top tax rate cut, you don't go in and say, hey, I'm a rich guy, I want my taxes cut. You say, if we cut taxes on rich people, it will help the economy and everybody will prosper. It's trickle-down economics. Now, in the back rooms, they're sitting around laughing about it, going, yeah, we're going to pee on them and tell them it's raining. But that's what they did. And they sold it to the American people. We bought it hook, line, and sinker, and Reagan dropped the top tax rate from 74% to 28%. And suddenly we had an explosion of billionaires and an explosion of poverty in the United States. 34 years of it. And by the time Reagan's administration was done and he was off into Alzheimer's land, George Herbert Walker Bush was president. And he looked around and he said, this is crazy. And he raised taxes. And, of course, the billionaires got all hysterical and trashed him, and Bill Clinton came in and won in 92. And he raised taxes again, up to 39%, from 35% up to 39%, which is where they are now. I mean, George W. Bush dropped them again, and Obama raised them again, and here we are. But anyhow, the net of all this is that pretty much everybody has figured out that Reaganomics is a scam. It's a scam run by rich people on average working people, people who listen to right-wing hate radio, people who listen to Fox so-called hate news, people who listen to this stuff, people who watch this stuff are the poor suckers in our society. There's not any other way to say it. Anybody who tells you that if you cut taxes on rich people, it's going to strengthen the middle class, all objective evidence indicates that not only is that not true, but it's the opposite of what is true. And yet, Sam Brownback leaves the United States Senate, runs for governor of the state of Kansas, home to the Koch brothers, and says, hey, let's cut income taxes on the Koch brothers by 29%. And let's exempt all the sub-S businesses. Koch Industries, by the way, is a sub-S business. Let's exempt these businesses, 191,000 of them in Kansas, from any tax. Or at least any income tax. Oh, and let's cut our spending to schools and state universities by $45 million. And people were sitting around going, okay, we'll go along with that. And let's cut money going to poor people. And the poor people were really upset, but, they tend not to vote. And so Sam Brownback and his Republicans just don't give a rat's patootie. But then yesterday, or maybe it was Friday, Sam Brownback said, we still haven't made up the shortfall. I mean, we're missing hundreds of millions of dollars because the Koch brothers aren't paying taxes now in Kansas, or at least not paying what they used to pay. And not just the Koch brothers. I mean, all the rich people in Kansas. And so he said, let's cut our highway funds. Now, Kansas is a fairly rural state. You got a couple of medium-sized towns, Topeka and I don't know where else. But mostly it's a rural state. And people in rural states get around on the highways. And Kansas has a really nice highway system. It's well maintained. It's well funded because they used to have an income tax on rich people. So now you've got some Republicans. There's a little bit of blowback here. This John Hanna, writing for the Associated Press. He says, even a few of the legislature's most austerity-minded members were taken aback by the blow to the highway program, which comes as other states are considering new ways of ramping up infrastructure investment, some by raising taxes. Senator Forrest Knox, state senator in Kansas, one of the most hard-right Republicans in the state Senate. He says, and I quote from the AP story, "When I send out surveys and say what are the roles of government, and this is not just my district, roads are generally at the top of the list." The AP story goes on to say many of Brownback's allies have supported the cuts he's made to cover the revenue lost from his tax expenditures, which dropped the top rate for individuals by 29% and exempted 191,000 business owners altogether. Business owners. See, sub-S corporation means that you're running it as a private corporation and you pay taxes on it on your own personal income taxes. It's amazing. It's just amazing. How long is it going to be before even Republicans wake up? And as George Herbert Walker Bush did and say, this stuff is just bat guano crazy.